Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you too. How are you today? And where are you?
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
Okay. All
Are you
right.
in California?
No, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. That's a good place too.
I agree.
Um, you've never met me, but I feel like I know you because I grew up with your
Right.
movies. So I'm 51, so I was in high school. Breakfast Club came out, Young Guns, all that. So you're very familiar. Um, so it's kind of really surreal to be talking to you today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you wanting to talk and talk about the special movie, The Way.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a special movie in several ways. Um, but what I notice about it is I just love the father-son dynamic. And typically in a movie like this, it's a son piecing together his relationship with his father, and this is reversed. You know, so I think that's very unique. You want to talk a little bit about it? It's re-releasing, but when it released, it had such a response, and it seemed like a special response.
It was when it was originally released in 2011, people were really taken aback by the film because it wasn't sentimental. Yes, it's faith driven. Yes, it's faith based, but it wasn't your typical faith-based movie because our lead character Tom, played by Martin Sheen, my pop, is a non-believer. He's fallen away from his faith. He's kind of betwixt and between. He's an Easter and a Christmas Catholic in the movie, and so he's really kind of leaned into the finer things in life, the golf, the country club, the golf course buddies, his fellow doctors. He lives a very kind of cozy, isolated West Coast life. And now he really, he finds out that his son and this is not a spoiler alert, but he finds out his son has died on the Camino de Santiago, which is in the opening moments of the film. And he doesn't even know where that is. He can't even
Right.
fathom pilgrimage. He says, I don't know where that is. So he goes to Spain. He with the intention of bringing his son's remains back to the United States for burial, and instead has that moment of inspiration and says, I'm going to cremate the body. I'm going to take my son on this journey with me, and we're going to do this together. But what he doesn't understand is that he's not doing it to really honor the son. He does it. That may have been his original intention, but what he does is
Right.
he does it and finds himself, finds his faith, reconnects to community, reconnects to all the things that he's so fallen away from, and becomes a whole person, becomes a citizen of the world. And I think that journey is so important because what happens on that journey is that while he was never able to meet the son even halfway to understand his life, he now has to make a full journey, 500 miles, to finally meet the son and finally figure out what the heck he was doing out there in the world, wanting to be this world traveler and walking away from his PhD program at Berkeley, and sort of what the heck was he doing out here? And he understands him, and it's too late to reconcile with the son, but he becomes whole, and he becomes again, like I said, a citizen of the world.
Right. This is one of many, as I've said, many movies you've done, but there has to be something special about it, as when you look back at it, it's getting the re-release treatment. It hit people different. It's not, there's a lot of good movies, but there's some movies that stay with you. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about the response that you've gotten through the years that would even make you say, let's put it back out again?
Well, sure. I mean, initially, like I said, we got a very limited release in 2011. But when it started streaming and when the DVDs started coming out, and people were like, "Oh gosh, I got to buy 10 copies of this. I got to buy." Some people would buy 50 copies and then give them out as gifts.
Mhm.
The response was unbelievable. It was People were saying, "You've changed my life. This movie has had such an impact on me that I've now booked my flight to Spain. I'm going on pilgrimage. I'm going to Camino. Thank you for making this film." And then the film started to become unavailable. It was taken down off of the streaming services. The DVD was kind of dried up. You couldn't get any new copies. They stopped printing them. And lo and behold, we discovered that the movie's in movie jail, that it had gotten wrapped up in this lawsuit and a bankruptcy issue. And then it was in a motion to abandon rights in a Delaware courtroom, and we rescued it. Chris Bueno, who runs a boutique distribution company called Ocean Avenue, called me and he says, "Hey, we just had the same luck getting 7 Days in Utopia re-released, and so we'd like to try to help you get this back out there." Enter Fathom Events. Fathom said, "Oh man, we realize that people can't find this movie. They can't. We believe that there's an audience out there to get this back in theaters, and so we're doing that. And we're out in almost 1,000 theaters nationwide now, which is just, I mean, kind of mind blowing. And you go online now and you type in your zip code, and we're 20 theaters in and around Cincinnati, and 50 theaters in and around where my folks live in California. It's just like, we never had this release when we first came out. Right. So I'm thrilled. My dad loves this movie, not just because he's the star, not because I directed it, but he's so proud of this film on so many different levels. Number one, he had to change his name in 1958 when he came to New York as an actor. So his real name is Ramon Estevez. Right. Ramon Gerard Estevez. And he's never seen his name up on the silver screen. And so he is a producer on this, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool to call him by his real name, Ramon Gerard Estevez? So you see that on the screen as an executive producer. And that goes back to, his father. He was raised in Dayton, Ohio, not far from where I'm at right now. And when he came to New York to become an actor and did change his name, his father came to see him on Broadway. And his dad, is a very shy Spanish man from Galicia, not far from Santiago de Compostela, looks up at the marquee and he saw Martin Sheen and he went, and he shook his head. And my dad was so ashamed that he hadn't honored the family name. So in this movie, my dad gets to see his name, his real name on screen. And then I dedicate the movie to my grandfather, Francisco, at the very end. And then the movie was really inspired by my son, who moved to Spain in 2003, met a girl on the Camino, married her in 2009, which is the year that we started shooting. So it really is, yes. 4 generations. Family, yes, 4 generations to bring this movie to the screen.
That is amazing. There's something, even when you're telling me that just, man, that's really cool. Is this the first time your father's been credited like that in a film?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know you know this, you look more like him every day.
It is a strong gene pool. There's no avoiding it. Yeah, there's just, there's no hiding.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing. I don't know, years ago I interviewed the guys who did this documentary called I'll Push You. Have you ever seen that, where they push the guy down? Yeah. I talked to all of those guys. That was an amazing movie as well.
Indeed it was. Yeah. We were actually on a airplane going to Spain years ago, and a gentleman approached me and he says, "Hey, whatever happened to that movie that you did about the Camino?" And I said, "Well, we're actually going to Spain right now to premiere it." And he said, "My son did the Camino in a wheelchair, and it was the Walkabout Foundation." And we actually joined with the Walkabout Foundation to do a premiere in New York City. But yes, people will, if they're so determined to do this Camino, you could do it on foot, you could do it in a wheelchair, you could do it on horse, you could do it on bicycle. But the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage, is there for all of us to explore, no matter how we want to do it.
At what point did you decide, when you were putting this movie together, back 10 years ago, that you wanted that your dad would sign on to it, and that this was a project? I know both of you are busy guys, but you're both able to clear your schedule off, and this is a special project to do together. It's different than him being your dad in a guest spot on a whatever, but it's a movie all about fatherhood.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's really what we leaned into when we were developing the script. And my dad and I would go on these long drives, and he'd come up with this idea. He said, "Hey, what if the backpack falls in the river and I'll swim after it?" I'm thinking, okay, well, there's going to have to be a safety crew there. You're going to have to get wet. You're going to have to. I mean, he's not an action guy. He's not an action star, but he was
Right,
coming up with all
yeah.
these action ideas, which are fine ideas, but you've got to make sure that you've got the budget to be able to capture those on film, and there was a certain amount of peril to that. But at its core, and I think this is to your point, this is a father-son story told in a very, very different way. And it is an actor's piece, because we see, Martin, I believe, is one of the great national treasures of American thespians. And he's out
Absolutely.
there, he's just out there doing, such great and fine work, and has for the last 60 years. But he's very proud of this movie, and he should be, because the subtleties, the quiet moments that we spend with him out on the Camino, there's not a whole lot of actors that hold your attention in the quietude, and he is
Right.
one of them. You lean in. You don't say, "What is he doing now?" You want to know what's going on with all that, and that comes just from, well, with age, with
Right.
he has a gravitas about him, and so there's all that going on with this character of Tom that he plays, that forces you to want to know more.
What's your outside of this movie, what's your favorite project of your father's?
Probably Apocalypse Now. I mean, that's just such a monumental film, and continues to stand the test of time. And it's a classic for so many reasons, not the least of which is the fact that it actually got made under all of those extraordinary circumstances, but the fact that it is a towering achievement in cinema.
Right.
And to watch him going through his paces, and watch him on this journey to find Kurtz, it's not dissimilar to the journey on the way, and not
Right.
dissimilar to his journey on the Camino de Santiago. And I think some of the great movies of our time are journeys, and
Right.
we all owe a debt of gratitude to the Odyssey.
Yeah. Emilio, I was going to tell you something else. When we're talking about the release of the film originally compared to the release now, another thing I think you have going for you is 10 years ago, those of us who cover faith films, 10 years ago, faith films were a little bit more in a box, and what we've seen over the past 10 years is a variety of faith movies. And when those movies were more in that box, people like me, or people, like my colleagues or whatever, might say, okay, that's not necessarily a faith film, so we're not going to cover it as much because it doesn't look like all the other faith films. Well, we're kind of learning, and everything's kind of evolving and growing to where now people will look at that film and say they fully embrace it and say, yes, this is a spiritual experience. So I think things have changed, and that's probably one of the things that I feel like that will push more people to see it this time around.
I think so too. I mean, I think 11 years, 12 years ago, people thought there were some things in the movie that were objectionable. But I think, again, we've evolved. We have gotten more progressive in sort of how we look at the world. And certainly the movie benefits from that, to your point. I think that we are looking at this movie now through a different lens, that it is not specifically a Catholic movie. It is not specifically a Christian movie, and yet it's both.
Right.
And it's not, so it lives in the secular and the non-secular world comfortably. And that is kind of a feat these days, to be
Absolutely.
able to land in both worlds and be genuine about both. Because I think, Hollywood has a tendency to say, oh, that's what's hot, and that's we gotta cash in on what's going on over there. We gotta tuck into the faith-based films. And then, but faith-based audiences, they know when they're being fed a load. And I
Right.
think that
Yeah.
if they know if the filmmaker's heart isn't genuine. It's just about just the nature of just how we sort of interact. And when it's just another Hollywood shill coming at you and saying, I've made this faith-based movie. It's like, no, you didn't. You're just in it for the dough. Our movie
Right.
has always been genuine from the moment we started. And in fact, I had to talk Martin away from it being a devoutly Catholic movie because I thought our audience, our tent has to be bigger. And the only way you get more people into that tent is to build a bigger tent. And so
Right.
we did.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's really good. That's really good. Well, I'm not gonna. I did want to mention to you. I have a daughter who's 13, and frequently when I interview people, it's 13. The people she's into, I have to be really discerning and kind of explain who they are. If it's somebody who's
Right.
got a career like yours, I'm like, oh, she's just not gonna know. But she's like, wasn't he in The Outsiders? Because she's all about The
Right.
Outsiders, and her friends
Right.
are all into The Outsiders right now. So she was
I,
pretty excited when I told her that she
well,
knows who
what
you
is her
are.
name? What is her
Natalie.
name? Natalie. So Natalie,
Yeah.
Natalie Chubit says hello. And I imagine
Yes.
that you're reading The Outsiders in school right now as part of a required reading. And so it's not the part I wanted. I auditioned more for Soda Pop, but I got 2-Bit. So hi, Natalie.
Do you have a memory from that filming? I know it's a long time ago and you were very young, but anything stand out to you?
Well, the fact that this was only 5 years after Apocalypse Now, and there I am on the set with Francis Ford Coppola doing a movie with him. That in alone, in and of itself, was surreal. The fact that I would ultimately get cast in one of his films, this master of cinema, the director of the Godfather trilogy, or 1 and 2 at that point. But the audition process was insane. Trying to get a part in that movie was, the competition was very stiff, and we, all of us, felt like we had just won some kind of prize by being a part of that. And we shot in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of course, which I shot the text there the year before The Outsiders. I'd been there on text, which was yet another S.E. Hinton novel. So
Right.
I was familiar with Tulsa. I was familiar with Hinton. And then again, it was just blessing to not only go back to work with Hinton again, but now be cast in a Coppola film. It's kind of a
Right.
dream of every young actor, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine. And what a crew, to see where the years have taken you all. It's pretty amazing. And I've just appreciated your career the whole time. Following everything you do, I think is stellar. Even looking, there were movies, like Judgment Night. I'd even forgotten about that one, but man, that was good. I was there when it opened. I was like, that, you're just, I think it was your everyman, kind of being in that position, kind of like the Bruce Willis Die Hard, like you can imagine what you take a wrong turn and then you have to survive.
Right.
But anyway, I could go all day, and I know you got 100 interviews. The only other question I had was, I've had a few songs going through my mind getting ready for this interview of your movies. I'm thinking one day, Don't You Forget About Me. The next day, Wanted, Dead or Alive, or is it Blaze of Glory? I think it's
Blaze of Glory,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is St. Elmo's Fire. So out of those 3 songs, which one hits you the most?
Well, I would say Blaze of Glory. I mean, again, that's if people were to stop me in the street, there's 2 movies that they want to talk about: The Mighty Ducks and Young Guns, and then of course The Way. I mean, and again, what's so weird too is sometimes I'll see someone coming at me and they say, "Hey man, I love your movie," and I just assume it's going to be Young Guns or something else, and they go, "I love The Way." I'm thinking,
Oh, that's
wow,
awesome.
I wouldn't have pegged you for The Way, but thank you very much. But yeah, Young Guns, Blaze of Glory. I still have the piece of paper that John Bon Jovi wrote that song on. He framed it and gave it to me. Contrary to what Kiefer Sutherland wants to say about how it was written and how he was sitting at the table, it didn't happen that way, Kiefer. So yeah.
I'm surprised you don't get more Breakfast Club, because that was my first thought. But yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Emilio. It's just an honor to talk to you, and thanks for the years of entertainment and for releasing this movie. I think it's going to snowball and be bigger than than you ever thought. And that'll be a great, to me, that'll be quite a story to say 12 years after release. It just, hitting at a different level,
Thank you. Well, your lips to God's ears, and I hope that comes to pass. And thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. So we'll see you in the theater May 16th, Tuesday night, for the re-release of The Way, man. It's just such a blessing.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye. Bye-bye now.